Welcome back to Forward Progress, presented by Fanduel. Listen, guys, you asked the questions, so we're here, and we're going to answer them. I'm the host, Jason Cooper, alongside Clive Bigsby and Rob Pizzola. Over the last couple of days, we released a little Q&A. Wanted you guys to drop your questions down below, and we have 4 questions to get at today. But listen, this won't be the only Q&A of the offseason. So if you have more questions, please feel free to use this video or the previous thread. Drop those questions down below because we'll be circling back and looking at those questions. Let's jump right out of the gate and go to Stroud Boy's question. And he's asking, which rookies do you think have the potential to surprise next season and make a major impact right away? Rob, let's start with you. Which rookie do you have making a major impact?
Yeah, first let's address the elephant in the room that me and Clive did not coordinate wardrobe today. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
We just happened to join and be wearing the absolute inverse of one another. There's a couple of guys that I have my eye on. One on the offensive side of the ball, one on the defensive side of the ball. I'll start with RJ Harvey, running back for the Denver Broncos. He was taken at pick number 60. He's got a very Alvin Kamara type profile. He's compact, explosive, a legit pass catcher as well. He put up over 1,500 rushing yards, 22 touchdowns last year in college. Sean Payton's offense is practically begging for a versatile back to step in. Their running back room is wide open, right? They have Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime. That's about it. And those are guys that we learned last year that he doesn't really trust either. So if Harvey gets first crack at the early down work and he shows that he can pass protect, I mean, we're talking 1,000+ rushing yards, in my opinion, 40+ catches. I don't think that that's some sort of wild hot take. So I have my eyes on Harvey. On the defensive side, I think there's a player who just is going to benefit from the players around him. That's Derek Harmon. He's a defensive tackle for the Steelers. Another second-round pick. This guy was second in pressure rate amongst all FBS interior linemen last year. But he's not just a space eater. He's a disruptive player. And he gets to line up next to Cameron Hayward, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt. That's a gift for any rookie that's coming in. So he's going to draw one-on-ones on every snap. He's not going to get doubled. Pittsburgh's aggressive front is going to allow him to tee off. I think he's a very under-the-radar player now, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's making splash plays on red zone every Sunday by midseason and people start to know his name. So those are the two that maybe are not obvious standouts with where they were drafted, but I think fall into roles where they can really have an impact here in year one.
Yeah, and on previous videos, we talked about some breakout players. Just going to use best ball ADP to almost like contextualize RJ Harvey here, going as 55th overall in best ball. So seemingly a guy who might be going too low, and maybe if you can't find a way to capitalize them in betting markets, there's definitely a way to do that through other markets as well. Clive, you don't have a player who's going to surprise, but you have a guy who you're kind of trying to fade. So I'm curious to hear who it is.
So going to the Raiders, right? I don't love all of the hype around Ashton. I just don't see that offense being able to produce enough around him. This so much reminds me of when the Giants took Saquon. And I kind of think that this is a draft choice that's going to probably set the Raiders back more than set it forward. He might have he'll have more than a couple of explosive plays. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I just don't think he is going to boost up the whole production of that offense enough to be, viable or really compete. He'll be fun to watch. He might be good from a fantasy perspective. I'm struggling to see how that offense is really going to kind of hum even with him.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I think the thing with Ashton Genty is where I can see him being like a big player in terms of player props or fantasy is just the sheer volume in a Pete Carroll type of like Pete Carroll has been pretty consistent with what he's wanted to do over the course of the years, and he's not going to change his tune at this point in his career. So I think from a volume perspective, I like Genty. And I made a case for the Raiders being potentially a sleeper team in one of the other videos we did. But I can see a scenario where that offense absolutely stinks. And that it would just be a product of play calling and the scheme that they're running.
Absolutely. And we, as we've seen and we talked about multiple times on this channel, GT right now at plus 250, very, very steep price for a guy who, I mean, doesn't have the talent surrounding him to kind of elevate him. And we're, again, jury's still out on Chip Kelly if he can be a NFL OC in the year of 2025. I'm going to jump in here because I actually wanted to give my 2 cents on this one, and I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go with James Pierce and Jalen Walker, both drafted by the Atlanta Falcons. Pierce was listed as the second best edge rusher per grinding the mocks. Jalen Walker, sixth best edge rusher. Listen, I'm not a tape grinder. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know how these guys play or I studied their film. They're just projected to be good players based on where they were drafted. But if we look at the Atlanta D, they struggled last year a ton to generate pressure. 31st in adjusted sack rate, 30th in pressure rate. Say what you want about like them using those assets, trading up, drafting 2 edge rushers in the first round. Maybe it's a bad move long term, but I think for this year, I think these rookies have a chance to make a really big impact for the Atlanta Falcons. Let's jump over to the next question here from Drew Timmy Turner. What's your favorite alt win total currently available? Rob, you led off last time. Clive, I'm going to throw to you. Favorite win total? Sorry, alt win total.
For me, it was the Carolina Panthers over 8.5 plus 200. Obviously, price shop around. This is maybe a quarter of a homer pick, but I mean, I think probably more than 3/4 of it is just based on a very weakened schedule, and I believe they strengthened their team a lot through the draft. When I look at a lot of the teams on their schedule, I think they can get off to a hot start. Jacksonville, Arizona, Atlanta, New England, Miami, and Dallas, depending on how well they play early. I mean, they can get off to a very, very, very quick start there. And I mean, I think the strongest team on their schedule is Buffalo, followed by Green Bay, which I have them more on a list of mine to disappoint than overachieve. I just think they have a path to that number. And I think at, around 33% implied, I think that's a very, very, very fair price.
Yeah, Panthers alt win total over 8.5 plus 200 for Clive for his favorite alt win total. Rob, over to you. You're taking someone. I'm not going to barely. Just go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this. This one's going to sound almost like I'm trolling, but I promise I'm not. I'm looking to fade the Buffalo Bills in alternate win total markets this year. So FanDuel has under 9.5 wins at plus 380. I'm waiting for more options that are even lower than that. And look, obviously, I know all the reasons why Buffalo could be a great team, right? Josh Allen is incredible, top 3 quarterback in the league, easily, arguably the best. But this team lives and dies by him, and that's part of the issue when I'm looking at alternate unders. He plays with such a reckless abandon that one awkward landing can tank basically the whole season for their team. And I know you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks around the league, but their backup is Mitch Trubisky. Enough said. Like even with a healthy Allen, guys, the warning signs are kind of flashing, right? Like Buffalo was a top 8 team in terms of health last year. They only lost 56 adjusted games to injury. They had a plus 24 turnover differential. That's 8 better than the next best team in the league. They recovered 68% of fumbles in their games. Those are all stats that scream regression to me. The schedule's tougher. The roster's thinner. They said goodbye to key veterans on both sides of the ball. Obviously, if Allen stays healthy and plays MVP level ball, they're going to be dominant and these are going to lose. But if anything goes wrong, they could easily crash at almost 4-1. That's gladly a bet I'll gladly take. And I would be looking for like some really extreme prices on like under 5.5 wins, stuff like that as we get closer to kickoff this year, depending on what the prices are on those. Because I do think there are scenarios where, I mean, listen, I guess I'm piggybacking on the GRP wins train right now, betting them to have the worst record in the league. But I don't think it's that outlandish for Allen to like suffer an injury earlier in the year and for this team to just be a really bad football team. So like the Bills at full health, if their quarterback's dominant, but I think there's a lot of paths to them underperforming this year.
I'm
so
shaking my head. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if they're the team of the top, say, 5 or 6 teams in terms of expectation, I feel like they have the most fragility in terms of their quarterback. So when this question was asked, those are what I was looking for too, for some of the unders. I didn't end up pulling the trigger on that one, but I can absolutely see a path to that for sure with the Bills.
I think with a lot of the top teams in the league, you look at the roster and you won't be impressed with the backup. At least Kansas City brought in Gardner Minshew this year. I think that gives them a little bit of a higher floor in case Patrick Mahomes was to get hurt. Cooper Rush in Baltimore now, I think also like he's a decent game manager. He's not going to put up Lamar numbers, but Mitch Trubisky is an abomination at the quarterback position. And I know they have Mike White there as well. Maybe they can pull a deal mid-season if something were to ever happen to Allen. And I'm not speaking in absolutes like it will. I'm just saying that, I mean, you guys watch the Bills play. Guy puts his body on the line every single game. He'll play through injury and make things worse as well. So when I'm looking for a team that has like a fat tail outcome towards being, underperforming, I think Buffalo really fits that mold.
Yeah, I mean, you said it the best. It's just of all the best quarterbacks who help carry their team like Allen does, he is by far the most likely to get injured. Him, maybe Jalen Hurts, but seems so insulated with that tush push. He might be fine. We've seen him play through injuries before. Anyways, I'm going to jump in again here, and I'm going to go and take a look at the New Orleans Saints under 3.5. Very, very stinky, gross bet at plus 250. Listen, I know what you're saying. It's a really low number, but I look at this team outside of Chris Olave, who has like major concussion issues, who might, one more concussion, he could potentially have a career-ending injury there. Brain health is very serious. Aging Alvin Kamara and our king, Rashid Shaheed. Outside of those three guys, this roster instills like zero confidence in me whatsoever. It is by far feels like the worst roster in all of football. On top of that, I think they have a bottom three coaching staff. I have very little faith in them. Kellen Moore has kind of had good offenses everywhere he's gone in the most recent last couple of years. Bad roster, bad coaching staff. I mean, it just seems like it's a recipe for a disaster. Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler's probably going to be their starting quarterback out the gate. Doug Nussmeier, go be terrible for this team and draft your son Garrett next year. I'm going to take under 3.5 wins at plus 250 for the New Orleans Saints.
I'm not saying it can't happen. Obviously, I made a case for Tyler Shuck in the Offensive Rookie of the Year market. The only thing I'll say is like it's contrary to how I like to play these types of markets, the alts at least, where I typically like to take a bad team over and a good team under. I think that's where you're generally going to get more value. But listen, if the Saints could not win a game this year, and it wouldn't surprise anyone. It's not a very good roster. There's a lot of unknowns and question marks, as my lighting here seems to have failed me. But ultimately, yeah, I don't mind that look, Jay. I think they're bad. It's just not the way that I would typically want to play one of these.
Of course, that's a fair point there. I was more looking towards. I've played this. At the Saints to be the worst record in 2025. You can get that around plus 450 if you shop around. Not available on Fanduel right now, but if you're looking to play an all-win total, that's kind of the angle I was going for there. Before we get into the next two questions, though, I want to give a quick shout-out to our sponsors over at Fanduel. It might be the off-season, but if you want to bet on the NFL and NFL futures, Fanduel is the place to go for that action. We absolutely love FanDuel here at Forward Progress. They have tons of markets available, including awards props, who's going to win the Super Bowl, win totals, alt-win totals, all that you can parlay together. Just visit FanDuel.com/Forward Progress to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/Forward Progress. All right, two more questions to go. This one's coming in from Artificial3604, and he's asking if you had to bet your life on any team in the NFL getting 10-plus wins this season, who would it be and why? And listen, before we get into your answer, Clive, your answer, Rob, I'm going to go first because I answered this before we shared our answers, and I wrote down the Bills, and now I'm really scared. I wrote Bills. They have the elite quarterback, easy division, playing a soft NFC South. The one thing I added in there is I need a QB injury clause if we're taking this bet. So with mine out of the way, Rob, I'll let you go next. Who you got and why?
This is actually a pretty damn tough question. I'm not going to lie to you. First and foremost, I'm never betting my life on anything, but for the purposes of answering this question, I went back and forth on several teams, and ultimately I decided, well, you need a team with 10-plus wins. So you're not chasing ceiling, you're chasing floor. And to me, I think the Baltimore Ravens have a really high floor. I think the Ravens are built for the regular season. Like, you look at Lamar Jackson's record when he's healthy, it's ridiculous. He's won like nearly 75% of his starts. They've averaged over 11 wins a year in seasons where Lamar plays at least 14 games. Their roster it's deep, it's fast, it's physical. O-line held up last year, really good coaching. Defense played really well last year. Derrick Henry was a huge addition to wear teams down late as well. I mentioned earlier, I don't mind Cooper Rush as a backup at all, someone who can at least manage games if there was an injury to the starting quarterback. So ultimately, the AFC North is tough, But the Ravens don't have to be perfect. They just have to be themselves. Their schedule isn't brutal. They've consistently handled business against weaker opponents. Even if the offense takes a slight step back, I think Baltimore's baseline is still very high. They're not a smoke and mirrors team. High floor, high discipline. So I'm going to hitch my wagon to Harbaugh and Lamar. But I could have answered this in many different ways and ultimately just finalized on Baltimore here.
Yeah, Baltimore Ravens for Rob. Clive, who you got as your team to get 10 plus wins?
So I had a very similar outlook to the Ravens too, especially looking through their schedule. This is going to pain me to say it because it hurt me when they won the Super Bowl last year, but I would go with the Eagles this year. Their schedule, while tough, you still have the Giants on it twice. You still have, even if Hurts does get hurt, McKee was okay in his appearance last year. They still have the receiver, A.J. Brown. Like, that matters. They still have a defense. They did well with the draft and depth. And a lot of the teams on their schedule that people were high on last year, I'm actually kind of expecting regression there too. So I would unfortunately go with Philly, and I think they would let me down. But again, I wouldn't bet my life on anything probably either. So that's where I end up with. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Yeah. If I'm in a position where I have to bet my life on something, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
All right, Baltimore, Philly, and Buffalo, all three teams with relatively high win totals, the highest in market, all around 11.5. Let's get to the final question here, coming from Takes by Levi, friend of the show. Which division winner from last year is most likely to have a drop-off and finish last in their division this year? Clive, I'll lead off on this one.
So I went with the Rams here, just based on the variance of how the Rams played last year, who are in their division. I just think it's kind of compressed between the four teams, or at least I could see a path where it's very compressed. So seeing San Francisco jump up, Seattle is the bigger question mark out of everyone, but I could still see them doing okay with Darnold. Stafford gets hurt. It was kind of a tough thing to go with, but I think given how close I saw those teams and, Arizona with another year, with this coaching staff, that was the best I would come up with, the Rams. I'm not high on them at all. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, there's obviously got to be concern with Stafford, who's 37 years old. Fragility is there. He's been hurt before. But yeah, the Rams for Clive. Rob, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, it was between two teams for me. The Rams were one of them. I've obviously said my piece on how much I love the 49ers within this division. The problem is I don't really like the Seahawks at all this year. Just my take, which I know, Jay, you disagree with. I'm going to go with the Lions. Some people might think this is stirring the pot with Uncle K, Joey Kanish, colleague at Hit the Books, being a huge Lions fan. I just think that there's such a wide range of possibilities within that division this year. I think Chicago will be a lot better. But when I look at Detroit overall, they lose Ben Johnson. And that offense has been humming with Ben Johnson. We have, I don't think we can set the same expectations for the Lions offense this year. Now, they likely get some positive regression out of their defense. There was a point in the year where they were decimated in the defensive front seven. Obviously, they lost Aiden Hutchinson late in the year. When you look at what they were throwing out in the playoffs last year for the Lions, it's no surprise that they lost at home to Washington and couldn't stop a nosebleed because they didn't have the players to do so. But even at full health, I don't like the Lions defense. I think it's a well below average defense altogether. So I'm looking at a team that I think is really bad on the defensive side of the ball with big question marks in terms of how they're going to run their offense this year. I could see the Lions falling to last place in the division. I'm not saying it will happen. A lot of these teams that won the division last year are likely going to repeat or going to be in competitive. But it came down to Lions and Rams for me, and I think the Lions are just slightly more likely to possibly finish last.
Yeah, and on top of that, Rob, I'm sure people who watch our all of our videos know that I love this. I have the Lions to finish last in their division at plus 600. They also, between the time of that video and now, they lost Frank Ragnow, which is their,
Yeah,
their number one center, their center, and it's gonna be a tough hole for them to fill on the offensive line. On top of already having to make up for the fact that they lost Ben Johnson. I mean, Rob, you yoinked mine. I can't think of another one. I think the Rams and the Lions are. If you were going to pick one division winner to fall out of first place, probably be one of those two guys.
I think, like, listen, at the end of the day, these are a lot of good hypothetical questions. You have to have the ability to think probabilistically on this stuff. Again, there's very much a range of outcomes where the Lions win, 14, 15 games again this year, and they're a contender to win the Super Bowl in the NFC, and they just don't miss Ben Johnson. That's within the realm of possibility. But I think probabilistically, and I think in all likelihood, yeah, there might be some positive regression on the defensive side of the ball. That doesn't mean that they have a good defense. It just means that they're slightly better than last year, where I think we might see a significant drop-off with the offense. They do have great skill position players. I mean, they have Jahmyr Gibbs, he's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, they have guys. They have players. But ultimately, scheme is so important in the NFL, and I think there's reason to be concerned.
For sure. Betting markets also agree with us there in the sense that they have the Lions at plus 150. Plus 150 to win their division. That wraps it up for us here today. Again, if you enjoyed this Q&A, we're going to have a couple more Q&As down the road. So drop your comments down below. Ask us questions. We'll be sure to answer them at some point in the future. And if you made it this far in the video, do us a favor. Smash that like button. It goes a long way for us in the algorithm. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.